Edmonds are worse for you.
All right, guys, let's talk about hogs. Let's look at that chart first and foremost, because anybody tells me the hog market hasn't topped, we're going to have an argument right off the get-go. This is obviously topped. You know, we've been talking for the last year, I guess kind of year, about PED and the impact and all that, and you know, we heard people talking 12–15% fewer hogs by, you know, mid-late summer and all that. Obviously, that never came to pass. Interestingly, I remember when we first started talking about PED, we were trying to get a handle on it, and I remember saying, well, if everybody in the country gets it for 3 weeks, just on average, if everybody got it for 3 weeks, we'd lose about 6%. We went through the whole gyrations and all that, and then, you know, call it dumb luck or whatever, but it's been, you know, 6%, 8% sometimes in terms of numbered losses, and obviously, you know, we kind of thought early on that the Packers would go big to make up for it, and boy did they. You know, they went big. So, you know, we've had that run. We've discounted the worst of the PED. Even before the Russian announcement, we were already, you know, looking at probably peaking. People just wanted to see if we'd get into this mid-August time frame without seeing a big drop-off. From what I hear out there, I think what we saw in the latest hog and pig report, you know, got to tip my hat to the USDA. They've been pretty good in light of so much uncertainty. If you go back and check their numbers off their hog and pig reports versus actual, they've been pretty good. So, you know, obviously the top's been made. The question is now what do we do? Okay. Overnight they were down again. You can see I put in red lines, and I wish I'd have brought my glasses. They're already back through the, I think that's 50%. Somebody help me.
Yeah.
We're already through the 50% retracement of the entire move in the October contract. Could we go down to that 61.8, which if I got to do this from memory because I can't see it. Bring my glasses at 92 and some change. Could we go back that level? I think you could. What's important to remember though is in historic markets like this, you get a little bit of that right shoulder and then that's it. So I think what you have to do first is you have to say, you have to score a bottom. Interim bottom, doesn't mean it's the bottom, but an interim bottom. Then you start looking at your retracement levels. Minimum ones, 25, 38%. You start looking at those and use those kind of as your targets in whatever marketing strategy that you want to use. For example, you don't have to wait. You could sit there and, you know, once you form at least a sideways trend or anything other than the down we've seen over the last 5, 6, 7 days, you can look at something where you say, okay, looks like we're bottomed here. Let's say that on the way up, the 90, you know, upper 90s, somewhere like that would be a good target for a retracement rally. You can sit there and say, okay, what I want to do then is I want to buy a put somewhere below the market. I want to sell a call up near that retracement top, and then a couple dollars over that, cover it with a call, just in case something happens we don't foresee, and the market, you know, I don't want to put us in a position where, you know, something happens in terms of your production. But, you know, obviously PED is not going to be a big issue against the October contract, but going forward, you know, there's production uncertainties that we, you know, there's always production uncertainty, but they seem to be worse now because of the advent of this disease. But I want to get us into something, probably looking at about half of the period from mid-August out to mid-February as a good start. I think we need to get some downside protection. Obviously, we're going to be buying feed as cheap, if not maybe a little cheaper than what we thought originally. But, you know, the top's been made. Please get that through. I mean, we're not going back up there again. If you look at, I'll ask a question. If you look at that, can I use your pen, Phil? There's a potential for an obvious head and shoulders formation in the market, okay? Your neckline would be down here somewhere, across there, and then your left shoulder's here. The shoulders aren't always symmetrical, but that would be an area that I think, if you say, well, once the market does find a catch point, where could you go back to? Potentially that right shoulder. Although I'm not always, in historic years, it's less certain you're going to see any. I probably wouldn't be brave enough when you start defining your risk parameters, where you say, we go above this, something's changed. If we're able to sustain, in this particular contract, the October, something over that area, whatever.
I can't really read it either.
104, okay. If you were to see somewhere 104, 105, that's probably the max. If we were to go over that price again, I'd say something's changed. I don't foresee it, but that's where I'd want my protection. You know, and say, okay, if I was going to buy a call over a short call that I'm financing this with, I'd want to be protected over 104. That would be the area where I'd say something's changed, something's different. As far as the Russian thing, I think it's more of an excuse at a bad time of year as opposed to a real reason. For pork, we've been averaging, since Russia started taking pork again in March, we've been averaging about 8,000 metric tons a month of 280 to 320,000. So, you know, in terms of percentages, it's not very big. Beef, almost less than that they import. It's really the poultry side where they import. About 7% of all the poultry exports go to Russia. So that's significant for them. If it doesn't go to Russia, it either goes somewhere else or it stays here. And if it stays here, you know, we compete pretty directly with the poultry side of things. We're also seeing evidence now over the last 2 to 3 weeks. We're starting to see the egg sets climb again, 2 to 3%, and we haven't seen that for a long time. So the poultry guys are starting to buy this. That, you know, of course, most of those guys, if not every single one of them, buys all the feed, you know, that they use. So they're very sensitive, more so than a pork producer who grows feed. So, you know, we're starting to see the advent of that. Obviously, it's going to take the hog and cattle guys a while. The last hog and pig report, at least what was on the ground, intentions weren't all that high. What are you guys? Where do you guys at on that? Where do you feel pork production's going? Not I should say hog production, because weights have a big deal. What overall pork's going to be.
Numbers are excellent, I suppose, until we break with ED.
Which we're going to a degree.
What's yours did this last time? Was it as bad or
Oh,
same?
it wasn't as violent, but it lasted longer. Total loss was probably a little worse when we first go around, just because of the amount of time it lasted.
Is it over completely?
Everywhere now on the 3 we have, we're back.
Has anybody you've heard of within, you know, that you know on a first-hand basis, have you had any re-breaks that you know of?
You know, I thought our re-break was gonna be the beginning of a series of re-breaks, and it's kind of.
No, but you know, timing's everything.
It is.
And you guys hit it.
You know, we're gonna
Early.
close the curtains up, the ventilation's gonna suck, and we're gonna get environmental conditions that lead to.
Ours had never completely went away. We can't say that we've never had, we don't lose many.
But we have sows and nursery pigs and.
We got, yes, at home where it's all too close together.
On the same.
We may be better off.
Yeah, I mean, there's a.
Well, I think, you know, when the
We're
temperatures
starting-
get
we're
cold
starting
again,
using-
you know, it's gonna break again. The question is how widespread. Have people gotten better at treating it between vaccines and just the way they handle it? You know, now they have the experience in how to handle it.
We're gonna start
Sure.
using the vaccine,
Well,
just to see.
my confidence in the vaccine is very low because the directions that Harris, a month ago when I ordered it, we said, yeah, vaccinate everybody today, and then 3 weeks later. Well, now, it's, you vaccinate 7 days pre-pair. So that tells me that we're probably wasting, whatever it is, $3 or $5 a sow. Because
We'll see. We'll see. Well,
I
for
think
one thing,
they're guessing.
whatever this bug is, they don't seem to go, or the immunity is, don't hang around any amount of time.
Well, it's gonna be an issue again. The question is how big. You know, I'm certain it's gonna be around. It's still around. You know, we're still every week we're seeing infections by the veterinarians are reporting.
The only other disease in my mind, you know, everybody would say, oh, everybody's got TG this one, or this or that, was circle virus. And I didn't think we really had it. And I don't know whether, you know, we didn't lose a lot of pigs like you read about, but all of a sudden when the vaccine come out for everybody and it worked good, you know, the biggest thing was our tail enders went down, because I tracked anything that doesn't sell for the top price gets put in the pre-market category, and hell, that went down a third for us, that I didn't think we had. You know, and then we always had a couple places that was trouble, you just couldn't seem to never make the pigs do good. And if we ever do get rid of this, it'll wham. But maybe we won't. The way the vets talk to me is, or sounds like, is.
And it's not
I don't
just
think
us.
anybody
I mean,
knows very much.
It's been
I
a
don't know if you
global
guys have
issue.
had it or
Japan's
not,
had it
but-
break bad, South Korea's had it break. So that's
Japan's got it real bad now.
that's helped support, you know, our exports, you know, because everybody's gotten it, and everybody will get it sooner or later. When you're talking about a disease this virulent, everybody's gonna get it. In a global environment, you're not gonna keep it out.
Someplace I read, they thought it might be related to bats, just lately, that it was a bat virus before it was a.
Short term, we're looking at, right now, we're looking at much larger discounts in the futures market versus the cash markets. We're also looking at a seasonal from now to shortly after Labor Day that has a tendency to be supportive for pork. So if somebody put a gun to your head today and said, you know, where or when is the pork
Don't
market?
you think that's a big part of what's going on now, is just seasonal and record longs?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you've
Getting
got
out.
you've got funds, but ultimately, the pork, you know,
I
as
agree.
opposed to grain, you know, pork drives hog futures, not the other way around. And we've seen a pretty sharp beef break as well. But we're looking at a good seasonal here. I think you're gonna score a bottom soon. Put that, soon, relatively soon. And then the question is how far do we bounce? And people say, well, where are we gonna sell hogs? And I always said, look, you gotta quit going down before you start talking about up. Otherwise, you're dreaming and but I think we're at levels we're gonna see it catch relatively soon. It's becoming a good value. Pork's lost substantially more than beef even, so we're becoming very competitive at the retail level.
The nearby contracts more beat down than the deferreds, relatively speaking.
Well, no, because the deferreds are they're getting closer together now. I should take that back. They're getting, February is getting close to where October, you know, they're getting relatively even. But we're looking at, I haven't checked it today, but the last time I looked yesterday, we were still in that 22, 24, even with the break, cents a pound, discount October futures versus the cash market. And seasonally, you're talking about 8, 9 cents a pound. So there's a fairly wide amount of hurt that's been put on the futures side that hasn't been on the cash side, which begs the question, of course, and you guys already know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, you ought to be shipping hogs yesterday and as fast as
Well,
you can.
and don't you think everybody's been doing
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
last 2 or 3 weeks?
Yep, yep.
Let's get rid of them, get rid of them,
Yep,
get rid of them.
and we
sell
could
futures
create,
and
you know,
sell.
we could, instead of
'Cause I
the
really
PED
thought-
hole getting over now, we might kind of stretch it out a little bit, and it's a self-imposed, self-made hole as opposed to the PED hole, because everybody's rushing to try to get hogs to market.
Because I really thought the hole would be more, I mean, for us is August, and there's a lot of people got it after that, you
Mhm.
know, in
If people forget, the peak
March,
was February.
Yeah.
The peak. It didn't just go like that, I mean, it
So
did this.
that's really still to hit
Sure.
as far as
Well,
numbers.
here's my question, though, and maybe you guys know, because you're more involved. When the first PED come in, would you say that probably the large, ultra-large south farms got it first? Would you say that would be the first statement or not? Well, where I'm going with this, when you look at the February time frame, and none of us know, maybe it was smaller operations that was being picked up at that point in time.
You know, I don't remember any of
Because they
the
don't break
Murphys
the
or
head
any of those people getting it until like November, December.
That's what I'm saying, it was
Okay.
in November,
Well, I mean,
December.
Robert got it in April.
But I'm saying the ones that got hit in February. may have
When they
been-
got hit, it got concentrated.
And you don't know how many of
That's
those
when
were
the- yeah,
finishers,
big
you don't know how many was sow farms, you don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Oh, that reporting's,
It's terrible.
well, I mean, I can't tell you how many samples, we sent in
Right.
20 different samples, and,
How they get figured.
yeah, are we 20 different farms?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a positive sample.
It's a positive sample.
Right.
Well,
But, you know, the beef market, when I go to that, and I don't know how long, I mean, that's one of my arguments with myself I keep having, that the beef market really had, nothing's changed, other than it got high and we watched cash beef be $8 to $10 over the futures for a long time, and still is. Now, maybe that's changing. I don't know why packers haven't just bought and say, you know, bring them to me. I don't know if the hog market's gonna be that way. Luckily, we haven't had much packer capacity shut down.
You know, you score tops, you know, it's the yelling fire in a crowded theater.
I-
It doesn't mean the fundamentals have changed. It
I agree
means,
with that.
You know, they run in there, and seasonally, you know,
But-
honestly,
And that's part of what I'm saying, the fundamentals is we still have people calling wanting hogs or trying to kill hogs, and they wanna be full, you know.
well, part of, I think, what's going on now, and I was talking to a guy in the packing industry early about this, like in March, he goes, everybody is pre-buying, putting in freezers, because we're scared to death about what this summer's gonna be. Well, we found out that this summer was, you know, the old problem seen, problem solved type theory, and that's a little bit of what we're going through right now. Some people say, and, you know, you can debate this.
Better have
this-
the freezer empty.
We've had a wet, you know, this cool year has done what to the tomato crop? You know, it's pushed everything back for those BLT season. So, you know, it's just a confluence of different events, but I think the biggest part is a lot of it is, it wasn't as bad as we thought, A. B, people planned, in terms of buyers, they planned for the worst and stuffed freezers full. And then, of course, you know, these weights, again, cool summer, weights have stayed up relatively well. You know, the packers went fairly early to decide they'd let them balloon. And then when you didn't see your normal summer nosedive in weights because there hasn't been that much pressure, you know, in terms of stress.
What's the